Hey guys, welcome to another video. This one is going to be a little bit special as we will be solving the Samurai Lab from HackSmarter Labs. This is a very interesting beginner level lab that you definitely should try. And I'll explain a bit of the scenario that's given in the official page. As part of a penetration test, your team identified an interesting web server. Your task is to enumerate the target, establish an initial foothold, and escalate privileges to root. A pretty basic part that a lot of capture the flag competitions take. But here's something that I would like you to know. I am including a lot of the things that I have learned and a lot of my mistakes as well. So just watch to the end and maybe you get to learn something as well. We don't need any kind of credentials to gain initial access. We just need to connect to a VPN. So let's get into it and let's get started. All right, guys, let's get started with the lab. First of all, I'll just start it up. You see, I already have an IP because I've solved this before as well. And I won't be sharing the flags in this video, but I'll be showing my exact methodology that led me to discovering those flags. And just so you know, while the lab's starting up, let me yap a little. So it took me around 4 days to complete this easy rated lab just because I was taking my time trying to understand everything that I was doing. And if you're more experienced with these kind of things, this might be a walk in the park for you. But this video is specifically meant for someone who's starting out and who wants a clear defined methodology of what we're doing and why we're doing it. All right, now that the lab is started up, let me just see if I can access it already. And I've made the font a little bit bigger so that it's easier to see. And I hope that's not too big. So as you can see, it's still taking its good time to load. I'll just assume that we have to wait a couple of minutes before it gets started up completely. So let's just give it a little bit time and let's wait and watch what happens. And yes, by the way, so our machine is started up. If you have not yet configured your VPN, please do make sure that you download the VPN configuration and connect to it. And the VPN configurations are different for every lab. It's different for this lab as well. Just make sure that you connect it to the VPN and then we'll proceed with the video. All right, now that I hope that you've been connected to the VPN, if your lab was not loading, maybe that was the issue. All right, let's go ahead. So first of all, what we'll be doing is we'll just take a look around the website, see if we can click anything, see if anything leads us anywhere. So as you can see, this is a pretty basic single page website. There's nothing that I can click. There's a little bit information about a samurai, which is interesting. You can read about it yourselves. I would highly encourage you to do that. All right. So there's nothing much we can do here manually. Let's try do one thing. Let's try and run nmap against this website. Let's see what we can find out. So we'll just straight up head to our terminal. Let me just copy the IP again so that I don't forget. And we'll be running the following command. We'll say nmap, if I can type, and we'll be specifying that we want to see the versions as well. Let's make it verbose. And let's paste the IP here. I hope I'm not making a mistake in anything. All right, let's try and run this. Okay. So it's running against the first 1000 ports that are most common in these scenarios. We'll let it run, and when it's done, we'll continue with the video. All right, now that our nmap scan is completed, we can see that we have found two open ports. One is the port 22 running SSH, and other one is 80, which is running HTTP. So I'm assuming this is the one where our website is currently hosted. And this tells us that our server on which it's running is an Ubuntu server. All right, I don't think that we can do much with this. All right, let's try running dir search to see if there are any directories we might be able to get into through the website itself. So the syntax for that is really simple. You can just do dir search -u, and we'll just give the URL as HTTP and then our IP address. Let's run that. So Dozer just started running. It's going to take some time. So obviously to save the length of this video, I'm going to be skipping it to the moment when we have our results. If you're running it yourselves, I would suggest you let it run and just continue with the video when you're done doing that. All right, guys, I hope your scan is completed as well. As you can see, it's completed on our screen. And if you look through these, all the ones that are listed in white are the directories it found out. And even though there are a lot of these, I think the only one we're going to be interested in is the administrator directory. All right, let's check it out and let's see what we find out there. So we'll go back to our browser. We have our website open here. I'll just type administrator and let's hit enter. All right, so we have a login page over here, right? So let's see. We have a username field, we have a password field. So what I usually like to do is we would like to see if there is any kind of an any error message that might signal us towards its vulnerability against a brute force attack. So initially, what I was doing with this website was I would just enter the username admin and the password as admin as well. In a lot of cases, you'll see that there are some very generic error messages. So, for example, if I just hit login, right, what it says is that username and password do not match, or you do not have an account yet. So, this is not a generic message. Sometimes, let's just say that you just type in username admin and a random gibberish password. It might say that your password is incorrect. And what that means is that your username is correct. And then again, if you do know, a part, like let's say if you do know the username, you can just go ahead and try to brute force the password. And sometimes it works out. Here we see that it will not work out because it's not giving us a clear message or a clear indication of either the signals that we can do a brute force. So let's look into it a little bit more. I actually wasted a lot of time here because what I was trying to do was I visited this link, right? Forgot your login details, and I was thinking that this might be a very useful hint to uncover a lot of details. So what I did was let's just open this in the new tab and let me show you. So it's taking us to a site called docs.joomla.org, and there are instructions on how you could recover or reset your admin password. And I spent a pretty good amount of time here thinking this might be the answer to this challenge, but turns out we don't have the configuration.php file for this website, right? We cannot directly edit the database. So, I mean, you can just go ahead and give it a read, right? Maybe you discover something that I couldn't, but this is not the correct approach to solve this one. So I'll just skip to the correct approach. So whenever you go and find out a login page like this, right, there's a very high chance that you encounter a CMS or a content management system. CMS, for example, you can take WordPress. That's a good example of a CMS as well. Now here, the CMS that we are having is Joomla. Okay. The first time I saw that, I didn't think it mattered because I had never heard of Joomla before. But after solving the challenge, it is very important that we try and figure out if there is a CMS under a website. And if there is a CMS, then we can try and look out for some vulnerabilities in that content management system to maybe help us gain an advantage over the website. So once you do a quick Google search, right, or just ask your favorite chatbot, I use Gemini for that. There is a very good tool that is usually inbuilt in Linux, and if it's not, you can install it. The tool is called Zoom Scan. Okay, and so basically, Zoom Scan is something that you can use to enumerate the CMS for things like its version details, etc. And you always know that once you have the version of something, there's a very high chance that you might find out a vulnerability for that specific version, and then you can use it to maybe, gain access to the contents admin portal, things like that. So what we'll do is, let's go ahead and I'll just show you this. All right, let me just type in Zoom Scan. So what this says is OWASP Zoom Scan is an open source Perl based vulnerability scanner specifically designed to automate the detection of security risks in Joomla CMS websites. This is what we needed for this one, right? So let's go ahead. I'll just give you the syntax for this. It's really easy, just like does search. All you have to do is just give me a moment. I'll just clear this out for now because we don't need it. All right. I hope this is pre-installed in my environment. Let's see if it is. HTTP. And I'll just give it the IP. Okay, so Zoom Scanner is not installed, but we can definitely install it. Just do this. I'll give it my password. And we'll just give it a moment and it will be installed. I actually practiced this in a different environment, so I was not really sure if it was installed, if it was pre-installed in mine. But yeah, let's now just run this again. All right, there we have it. Zoom Scanner is now running against the target website that we're having. So it gave us the Joomla version as 4.2.5. This is going to be really important, so I want you to note it down. Let's let it finish and then we'll proceed on to the next step. Now that we know that our Joomla version is currently 4.2.5 that's being used, let's try and see if we can find any public exploit so that we can gain admin access to this website. So a simple Google search will reveal that for you. And I honestly want that you go ahead and try to search it on your own before you look at how we do this in this video, because research skills are something that's really important for you if you're trying to enter the field of cybersecurity. So I'll tell you the approach that I took. First of all, I spent a lot of time just trying to blindly Google search everything. And then when it actually hit me, I did run a particular search that just laid it out for me straight in front of my eyes. So this is the exact search that I did, which you know just helped me get the exact exploit I needed. And you can already see it in my history, so I'll just run that one. I'll tell you why I ran this exact Google query, right? So if you go back to the lab, it is asking us for a user flag and a root flag. Okay, I'm not going to scroll it down because obviously my flags are listed out there. But usually in kind of a CTF or even in a real lab environment, what happens is a lot of the times you won't be finding these flags inside of the website itself, right? So even if, let's say, in the login page that we're having here, even if I get admin access, even if I get into the website, there's no way I can just get those flags right out from the website. Now, the reason behind this is whenever a website is hosted on a server, there's a strict rule that no connection from the outside is permitted to get inside the server. Okay, there's a firewall sitting in the between. So if the website, if you're sending a request through the website to the server, it might not work. So in this case, what we do is we try to get a reverse shell and then remote code execution. What this means is you're not actually trying to access the server directly through the website. You're making the website send a interactive shell back to you. So it's not an inbound connection, it's an outbound connection. And usually outbound connections are not restricted, right? Usually it is assumed that whenever a threat actor is trying to get access to a server, it will be an inbound connection, which is why reverse shells can be so powerful. So now that we have searched out for this, I'll just go over to exploit DB, which is, a very common place for people to go and find out all of these exploits for specific vulnerabilities. So this is called Joomla version 4.2.8 unauthenticated information disclosure. Okay. So what we'll do is we'll not go very deep into how this code works. We'll just copy it and I'll show you how to make it work on your system. First of all, you see that this is written in the Ruby language, right? So as we go on further with the video, there are going to be some instances wherein you will be required to install some dependencies, but that's easy. I'll walk you through it. For now, we'll just copy this. Let's go back into a terminal. Let's create a new file. I'll be using nano. Let me just try sudo nano. What should we name it? Let's name it Joom exploit dot rb. RB is the common extension that you usually use for Ruby files, such as you use .py in Python files. So we'll just hit enter. Let me just paste everything that we copied. Everything is done here, right? This is just some basic information already commented out, so you don't need to worry about that. We'll press Control X, we'll save Y, and we'll hit enter. All right, now there's one more thing that we need to do. We need to give it executable permissions. All right, this is just a text file for now, but since we need to execute it against the server, we need to give it permissions to be an executable. What we can do is we can just write chmod plus x joom exploit.rb. All right, for this we need sudo. Just got confused between that. You can do this again. All right, now that it has become an executable, let's try and run it and let's see if it gives us back any kind of errors. All right, let's do this. All right, so what it says is this is unable to load a file httpx. All right, so this httpx is one of those dependencies that I told you that we would be requiring. Since they're not inbuilt in with Kali, right, we'll just try and install that. So for that we have a certain syntax. Like in Python, what we do is we just go over and we say, pip install and the package name. In this, in for Ruby, what we'll be doing is we'll be saying sudo gem install. Okay, so gem, Ruby is a gem. I mean, that makes sense. And then we have install. Let's try and do that. Sudo gem install httpx. Let it run for a while. So it's getting that. All right, so that has been installed. Let us try and run the first one again. Now it says that it requires another one, which is called doc opt. We'll just install that again. Sudo gem install doc opt. This is done as well. Now, spoiler, there's one more dependency we need to install. All right, so it's called paint. All right, and I might be calling it dependency. It might just be a library. I'm not very sure. So let me know down in the comments below so that I might not make this mistake again. All right, let's move on and install this as well. Sudo gem install paint. What are we going to do? Paint with it? Bad joke, I know. All right, so now that all of these libraries are set in our environment, here is how we can use it. To use this specific exploit, we need to provide this, which we are already doing, followed by the URL. And in case if you do have a bad habit like me, if you just paste the IP address in place of URL, it will throw an error for you. So instead of doing that, what you can do is you can just write HTTP and okay, I made a mistake. Never mind. I pasted the code instead of the IP address. My bad. Let's do that again. HTTP. Now I've forgotten the IP address, so I'll just grab it really quick. All right, paste it here. Let's let it run. Okay. So immediately, I mean, it was really fast. Somehow we see that we have a name Miyamoto for a super user, right? Which is probably the admin here, and there's a password as well, which I can't read out, but I'm pretty sure it says password at Joomla 456. But yeah, let's copy this, let's use it, and let's see if we can get access as an admin using Miyamoto here. For the password, let me just paste it in. Not now. All right, we have admin access. Now, our next task is going to be to find out, once that we have access to the admin panel of the website, how do we get reverse shell, and then how do we execute code in the server. So for that, again, I want you to do a quick Google search, try and find out how you can get reverse shell or how you can execute RCE from a Joomla admin dashboard. Once you do that, come back to the video and I'll show you how I did that. All right, now that you have come back from your research, let me tell you a few important things that we should know before proceeding. See, whenever a web server is running on a Linux machine, it is running as the user www data. Okay, here's why. Whenever user visits the website, there is some PHP code executed and the code needs some permissions on the system. Now, instead of giving it root level access, which is obviously dangerous, the system gives it the role of the user www dash data. Another thing to note, just like we discussed earlier as well, we need to get a reverse shell because as long as we are in the web application, all we can do is click around, change the website's appearance and other things that our current privileges allow. But we are still sandboxed from the server where our flags are located. Now, in any typical server setting, a firewall would block incoming connections. But through a reverse shell, the server will send a connection to our listeners. I'll tell you what listeners are, I'll tell you how to set them up. And from there, we can just begin our exploitation. So there could be a lot of ways you can gain RCE through a reverse shell, but the basics include uploading a shell spawning code line or a one liner as it is called to a template in the admin templates section accessed through Joomla admin dashboard. And then you can set up a listener to receive the incoming connection whenever the code is executed. For some reasons, I tried a lot of reverse shells, right, and they didn't work out. And later I found out why, and it was a really silly mistake that I was making, but I'm glad I made it so that it could actually help me to understand how these things work. Also, if you're not a part of the HackSmarter Discord community, I highly encourage you to do that. I mean, I was kind of lost. I was almost giving up because, see, walkthroughs existed, but even if you look at it, sometimes it's just not clear how things are happening, right? But asking around my friend, computer guy Trey, he said that different servers have different configurations and packages installed. So sometimes it takes some trial and error. Now, I was trying to just think that maybe I was just making some specific kind of mistake. But it turns out that sometimes these mistakes do happen, right? Sometimes there are different kind of configurations and things break sometimes. So what I was doing is I was trying to inject the PHP payload inside an already existing PHP function. and it was breaking the syntax every single time. Now, before I go on with the theory a little bit more, I'll show you how to actually access that. So once you go over to system and you see we have a section of templates. Let's go to administrator templates. We have this one, atom details and files. Let's click on that. All right. So there are a lot of templates you can choose to edit, but the one that I'll be going for is the index.php one, and I'll tell you the reason for it as well. So if you see a template called error.php, if you want, you can go ahead and edit that one out as well and try to get a reverse shell from that. But what usually happens is that to make this template get executed, you'll have to first cause an error on the website, after which you'll be catching, the reverse connection on your own shell. Index.php, however, is a file that will get executed every time the website loads. So this is going to be an easier version. So you can see there's a lot of PHP code out here and it terminates over here, right? Okay, so this is basically my payload. I'll be explaining what it's doing. So the earlier PHP code that you were seeing, it terminates over here, right? And from the bottom, there's an HTML code that's starting. I'll explain what this line means, but before that, I'll tell you the mistake that I was making. So I was trying to inject that same line that you saw inside of the PHP code, and for some reason it was breaking a lot. So through a lot of discussions, I came to know that sometimes reverse shells could be a little bit broken and unstable. So a very good idea to avoid that is to first spawn a web shell, and once you get the web shell, you can spawn a reverse shell from over there. So it's easier to execute. And if you want to see how that is done, my friend 0x Bob, he has a great walkthrough following that exact method. So I would highly encourage you to go and take a look on that. For now, what we'll be doing is we'll be looking at how I did it. So instead of injecting my payload inside of the existing PHP function, I just created a new PHP function, and this is the only thing that we'll be needing. All right. Now I'll be checking if the IP address that I've put on here is the same in my current machine as well. You can do that easily. Let me just spawn a new tab. I'll just say, figure this out. And I'll just go ifconfig. Let me make this a little bit bigger for you. And all right, I hope you don't see my IP address and don't hack me. Obviously, I'll be blurring this all out. But this is the one that we need right now, okay? There are going to be a lot of IP addresses, so in case you're ever confused, try and experiment with them. It's possible that you put in the wrong one, but for me, this one worked. So this is the exact same IP that I'm having over here, so that's fine. But before we actually go and save this one, right, which will cause this entire piece of code to execute, let me first spawn a listener so that I can catch the connection that the server is going to send out. For that, what we'll be doing is, let me clear this out, and we'll be using netcat for that. This is the simple syntax, and as soon as I hit this, now netcat is listening on port 4444 for any kind of incoming connections, okay? And whenever any kind of incoming connections are targeted towards my IP address, netcat will catch it and we can see the output over here. Getting back to what this thing actually means. So basically what this part means is that we are telling our shell, right, the bash shell, that we want to execute the entire string that is inside these quotes. First of all, what we want to do is we want to spawn a bash shell in interactive mode, which is -I, and we want it to go ahead and be forwarded over a TCP connection to this IP address at this specific port. Okay. This might be a little bit smaller. Let me just make it a little bit bigger so that it's not confusing. All right. Again, we are causing our terminal to execute this entire string as a command. We're sending a shell, a bash shell in interactive mode, and we're forwarding it over a TCP connection on this IP address, which is ours, and on this specific port number, which we have set netcat to listen on. All right, 0 greater than ampersand 1 is just, it just means that the input should come from the same place where the output is coming from. Without this, you will not be able to run commands and see their output like you should be able to. Now that we have this input into our PHP template, and we've also set up our netcat to listen to any incoming connections, let's go back, let's hit save, and let's see what happens. All right. So as you can see, this is stuck in a loop. All right. It just appears to be that because one of the pieces of our command is still active here. Let's go back to our netcat, and we can see that it has caught a shell, right? This is not our terminal because our terminal looks like this, right? Ferry at ferry. And this one is www data at street coder. Street coder, by the way, is the guy who made this lab. Huge shout out to him. And like I told you, whenever any website is running on a server, instead of giving a root access, it is given the privileges of the user called www-data. So currently we are in this directory. All right, let's try running a few basic Linux commands to get a basic idea of the environment. So if I type ls, there are these specific components, right? There is the index.php as well, which we just edited. Let me go back. Let me, just try and get hold of the user flag, and then we'll go on over to the part where we'll be escalating our privileges or elevating our privileges as root, and I'll explain everything that's happening over there as well. So I'll just go back. Let me see what's in this directory. So a couple of configuration files, things like that. You remember in the starting, it said that if we have access to the configuration file, we can reset our admin password. If you want, just give it a try. All right, but this is nothing that says user.txt. So let's go back and let's see what we have here. And all right, so we have the first user flag here. All right, I'm not going to be revealing what its contents are, even though it doesn't really matter at this point if you're watching. But still, I would encourage that you go on, do this hands-on, and you can just use cat user.txt and it will give you your first flag. Now that we've done this, how do we elevate our current privileges to a root user? One of the most helpful commands that you will ever come across when trying to deal with situations like these is sudo -l. Okay, what this command does is it will list everything that you can do as your current user, but with root privileges. We'll just hit enter, and going through all of this, it says that user www-data may run the following commands on street coder as root, requiring no password. Okay, and the command is /opt/backup/dbmaria. Let's take a look and let's see what this is. So I'll just do sudo opt backup db maria. Let's see what this does. So it's basically a database command, right? And the user says that it requires the name of a database, okay, to basically run this command. Let's give it a dummy name. Let's see what happens. What kind of errors do we get? So let's try and do this again. We'll go sudo opt backup db maria test. Now that we have run this, it says that there is an unknown database test when selecting the database. So basically we know that this is not a database that is existing inside of our server. All right. But that is not what we're here for. Now, whatever I'm going to tell is going to be really interesting because I was also struggling with this for a long period of time. So just wait and watch what we do here. Okay. First of all, let's go over and see what kind of a file DB Maria actually is. So I'll use the command file and I'll hope this works because the last time I did it, I actually went in the backup directory and then ran it. But let's see if we can run it out from here as well. Okay, it does work. Says that this is kind of a executable binary, right? Nothing too helpful that will help us, elevate our privileges. But something that we do know is whenever we are running this command, it is executing on the shell. Okay. Let me try and do one thing. Let me see if that works. And I'll try and explain something very important to you through this. Let me run sudo opt backup db maria and let's do this. I'll explain what I'm doing right now. Okay. Who am I? Hash. Now, in this specific command that I just typed, we are again passing, some kind of an input to DB Maria. But right now, what we're doing is instead of just giving a test that we did as a dummy database name, we are passing this entire string. We are saying, first of all, test must be passed on to this DB Maria executable. After that, the semicolon represents that there's another command that's waiting to execute. And when we're using hash, it means that whatever comes after this command, whatever comes after who am I, should be treated as a comment. This should work like I wanted to. Let's hit enter. And here you see we have all the previous errors. It says that test is an unknown database when selecting the database. But here's this interesting thing. You see, the command who am I that we executed returned us root, but we are still www data. So why did it return the root one, right? So what actually happened here was when we ran this specific command, right? When we passed this specific command, we were still executing it with sudo privileges. So when we ran sudo who am I, it gave us root because sudo commands are executed with root privileges. This is the exact thing that we'll try and get a root shell with. Okay. This is something that we call command injection. I'll show you how to get a root shell as well. If I remember the command correctly, it should go like this. DB Maria will again write test, give it a semicolon. Let's try and spawn a bash shell and let's type this. Now, if I have written this command correctly, what it will do is it will spawn a bash shell with the root privileges because we're again running sudo. And the dash p is so that it persists, so that it stays for our inputs and that it can give us outputs as well. Let's hit enter. Let's see if this works. All right. I hope that worked. Let me try and see. Okay. Who am I? Right. Okay. So it says that I am now the root user, right? Let me try and get into the root directory. Let's see if we can do that. Let's check if we were able to change it. Our present working directory is now set as root. Okay, let me try and see what's in this. And there we have it, our root flag as well. Again, I'll not be, just displaying the contents of this. I highly encourage that you do it yourselves. But everything that I went through, every single mistake that I did was something that led me out here. And at the end of this video, I would just like to thank everyone who has supported me to be able to solve this. Maybe it was a write-up from 5 years ago. this was a good learning experience. And this again reinforces on what Tyler always says, that a CTF is not something that you're meant to solve in 5 minutes, because sometimes taking your good time, slowly learning things with an easy lab like this one might also teach you something that might help you in the long run as well. So now that we are done with this one, um, I highly suggest that you go through this. Okay, if you have any questions, let me know down in the comments below. I'll try to help you out with those questions. If I can, someone from the community will definitely. And yeah, until I see you for the next video, I hope you have a really good time. Bye bye.